Welcome home, everyone. Thank you for joining in on this episode of Welcome Home with the Katinas. Welcome Home is a podcast where I, your host Josh, sit down for a conversation with different people who I admire and discuss whatever's on their mind, and especially focus on life at home in times like this. Wherever you are and however you're listening, thank you for your support, and once again, welcome home. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining in on this week's episode of Welcome Home with the Katinas. I want to start off by giving a huge congratulations to my cousins, Dylan and Grace Katina. Congratulations to you guys.
Yes.
I'm sure we'll talk about this past weekend for you all today, but I wanted to let you guys know. I know you're probably on a beach somewhere right now, but I was so honored to be a part of your guys' day, and the small chance that I hope you're not listening to this now on your honeymoon, but when you get back, please know that here in cold, dreary Middle Tennessee, we're thinking of you guys, and so proud of you all and excited for what the future holds. I also want to thank all of you who are listening to this podcast, watching us on YouTube. Thank you for your support, and especially thank you those of you who partner with us financially with Katina Ministries. We wouldn't be able to do this podcast without you. And believe it or not, there's much more to Katina Ministries than this show. If you don't know about it or you want to learn more, I'd encourage you to visit thekatinas.com, and you'll find more information about what we do on a day-to-day basis, because we do stuff daily as Katina Ministries with our cousin community, with our Love Squared outreach, our music ministry, of course. All of those things, you can learn more about them on thekatinas.com. So thanks in advance for doing that. Mm-hmm. This week, I have three of my favorite uncles here at the table with us. Uncle John, Uncle Yeti, Uncle James. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you, Josh.
And like I started the show off with, this past weekend was a big weekend for the Katina family. As our family grows, the times that we're all together, they become fewer and fewer.
Yeah.
But we were all together this past weekend, and I'd love to hear from each of you just how your experience was at the wedding of Dylan and Grace.
Wow, you're right, Josh. It was such a beautiful day. The weather was just like perfect, because we're in this time of the year where you never know. You could get a nice warm day, or the rain could come. But man, it was like God smiled down on Dylan and Grace during their beautiful occasion, the event, where, like you said, everyone was together, and I love those times. But there was a moment, I don't know if you guys remember, it was after the wedding, and then everybody was just kind of mingling, and then they started introducing all the people in the wedding, the groomsmen and I think it was 4 or 5 women that stood by Grace. But Dylan and Grace walked out to be introduced, and all of a sudden I just felt this like a flash, like my life just flashed in front of me, and I remember seeing Dylan's face as he was a cute baby. He was a cute baby, but I remember seeing his baby face, and then boom, he was right there standing next to his wife. And it was a moment, man. I feel like as I'm getting older, these moments are more precious. And we hear people saying, "Hey, cherish the moments." I really believe in that saying, because everyday life passes us by, and so that was a beautiful moment that I'll never forget.
I agree, Sam. For me, the weddings of my nieces and nephews, at least the last 4 or 5, obviously time to celebrate them. So we got to celebrate Dylan and Grace in a big way. It was so much joy, and like Sam said, just seeing Dylan, because I've known him since he was just a little infant to the place that he stood this past Saturday is amazing, because you think of all the other moments and memories in between. But for me, it's also time to just know that all 5 of my sons are going to be there. Zion got to be a part of the wedding, just like you. But just, man, so many memories, a lot of picture taking. But I love the outdoor venues. It's almost like you're stripping everything down, and all that matters is the coming together of these young people, these young adults. Your dad, Joe, did an amazing job, but it was awesome, man. It was the service was short and sweet, but it was memorable, and just everything after the celebration was top notch. And so happy for Dylan and Grace. We just said, John, that it was short and sweet. About a week out, I remember getting an email, and it was the rundown of the program. And I look at the bottom, and it says total 15 minutes. And I told Chris, I said, man, I'm willing to put money on it. There's no way it could be 15 minutes. Well, sure enough, I happened to glance at my watch as they were walking out, and it was 5:18. Oh, so it was the start time at 5:00. Yeah. So I was impressed. I was really impressed. And for me, from my perspective or my vantage point, I'm a little biased because Dylan is my son, but I'm like Uncle Yeti and Uncle John. Just there were so many moments that you could capture, really in any wedding, right? Just because it's about for Dylan and Grace. For one, the people who are there, it's a reflection of these two individuals, right? The culmination of family and friends and loved ones. We were just talking earlier. There were a couple of guys that were invited. They came, but Dylan had actually just met them in person for the first time, because these guys, I won't go into the whole story. They all they're gamers. They played online games with Dylan for I don't know how many years. Josh, you probably would know. And so I look at that example, and it's really fascinating to me how relationships take on a life of its own. And I don't know that I've ever had a relationship with people long distance online, and I've never had that. But to see these gentlemen come and accept the invitation to honor Dylan and Grace, again, I think it says a lot about Dylan and Grace. We were overjoyed, just for me to have my entire family, and then literally making and forging new relationships. For us with Bob and Jelaine, Grace's parents, and then there was a whole group of people that we just got to get to know each other, and all because of this ceremony, this event, this celebration that took place. So God has been so good this past weekend. It couldn't have been any more perfect. The weather was amazing. The scenery, it was beautiful. And right about now, Dylan and Grace are enjoying their honeymoon, so we celebrate them.
Yes, definitely. And you reminded me, Uncle James, I wanted to say I did get to meet a listener of the podcast at the wedding for the first time, Miss Jelaine. Yeah. If you're listening or watching, it was awesome getting to talk to you, and
awesome.
It was fun getting to hear from a listener that I never met before. So thank you for spending a few moments talking with me about the podcast. I'm sure there was more things on your mind last weekend, but happy to have you as a part of our extended family now. And
if you don't mind me just saying this, Josh, just because I know this was something that I think every parent that has whether it's a son or a daughter getting married,
you think about what family are they marrying into.
Totally.
And I couldn't be more blessed, all of us as parents, Michelle and Greg and Chrissy and I, that our son Dylan has married into an amazing family. We love the Jarretts, Bob and Jelaine, Caleb and Jordan, and then Grace, as you all know, is a twin. Griffin is an amazing guy. So we are extremely blessed.
I think people like Jolene, they know just a little bit more about the Katinas if they're, podcast listeners, because this platform right here is it's raw. It's unlike anything else that we do. So you guys know what I mean. Those people are they get a glimpse of a little bit more than what most people know of the Katinas, their songs and their, up on stage. But the podcast is a chance for people to just go beyond the surface.
Yeah, I was talking to Jelaine at the rehearsal dinner, actually, and she was telling me when her daughter Grace started dating this stranger to her, Dylan, at the time, she saw the podcast as a way to kind of start doing her research on Dylan, and then
that's great.
But it became she listened to Dylan's episode first, and then she thought, well, I guess I'll listen to his brothers, and by the time she had listened to several of our members of our family on the podcast, and so when the wedding weekend came around, she was like, I feel like I already know you guys.
Yeah,
even though I
that's
haven't
great.
met you, but yeah, awesome meeting you, Miss Jelaine. And Uncle James, I wanted to ask you this because I've been, over the last, I'd say 4 or 5 years of my life now, I've been to several weddings of like friends and obviously my own family members. I've been lucky enough to be a groomsman in a lot. And I've been to weddings where either the groom or the bride or both come from, their parents were divorced. And I've seen that weddings can be very difficult for some families who have gone through divorce. Parents are remarried or split, and there's concerns about, okay, where's dad going to sit? Where's mom going to sit? Who's going to give this speech? It becomes very messy really quick. And oftentimes I find that it can be a painful experience. I've seen, obviously, Jackson and now Dylan get married. And that hasn't, at least to me, that's not what the experience has been like for Jackson and Dylan. With their mom and their dad, there's no strife or animosity. And I feel like that doesn't just happen by chance or by accident. And I'd like to ask you, Uncle James, what is that? Was there steps that were taken, or is that just something you've been intentional about to make sure that, okay, when I'm around Jackson and Dylan, I don't want there to be unnecessary conflict or strife? What has that process been like for you?
Man, Josh, I really appreciate that question. So thank you for asking it. You're trying to find the right words, but I'll just say it's been a blessing. Yeah. It's been a blessing in regards to just the season of life that our family and our families are in over the last, Jack got married a little over 2 years ago, and then, of course, this past weekend. So what we're experiencing, and I'm just speaking from my perspective as Jack and Dylan's father, and my wife, Chrissy, and then their mom, Michelle, and their stepdad, Greg. Man, I've enjoyed both of those wedding experiences, and I think it's because we get along very well with Greg and Michelle. And I won't go into the whole story. Maybe I'll write a book someday. But it really was just years and years of working on those dynamics. Because the truth is, in a lot of cases, I don't know what the statistics are, but it's tough number one, for kids who are being raised in with two families because their parents split up, they divorced. And I will say, in the first several years, it was difficult. It was really difficult, just for obvious reasons. I think Michelle and I were trying to figure out what it was like to now be divorced and proceed, knowing that we have these two little boys. And so it was rough. And I won't go into all of those details, but anyone who's been divorced and who have kids in the picture, it's the dynamics, just trying to figure out. But you said something, and I know this to be true for Michelle and for me. We really knew that we needed to work on it and figure things out because of Jackson and Dylan. And I know you hear that, but when that's the goal and you have two people in this kind of scenario who are willing to work on it, I just, and I'm grateful for God and his grace. And somehow Michelle and I just came to the point where we were like, hey man, these boys are going to be impacted by our decision to divorce, but they're still our boys. We've got to raise them up. And I give so much credit to Michelle. And later on, as we moved on with our lives, Michelle and Greg got married. And then I think it was a year and a half later, or maybe even 2 years, Chrissy and I got married. And I mentioned Greg and Michelle because not only is it appropriate, but those two for sure. Greg, he deserves so much credit. And Chrissy, my amazing wife. It'd be interesting to get their perspective because they you have to have willing people like Greg and Chrissy to, number one, be willing and committed to come into a situation like this. And I'm sure, I know it hasn't always been easy for the two of them. But so when we have a wedding or graduations or any kind of family event, especially having to do with Jack or Dee, I really, and I know I get not everyone can say it, but I look forward to it. I look forward to working on, we worked on, the rehearsal dinner and different things like that. And my wife, Chrissy, just dives in, and her and Michelle it's a beautiful thing, and I know that, again, I think if anyone who's watching this, listening to this episode, and maybe you're in the thick of things and you have a similar situation, just know that it's possible. Again, you've got to be willing to put in the work and just decide that, hey, if we want our children to really benefit and know that this could be a sweet outcome, it could be a wholesome situation, it is absolutely possible.
Yeah.
So thank you for the question. I can go on and on, but I hope I've at least answered just, why we could have truly a celebration. Yeah. So, and a shout out to Greg and Michelle.
For sure.
Yeah. I love that, James. And I think one of the things that I've seen from you in your journey that has helped me in my situation was you and Michelle, and then even Chrissy and Greg. You guys have just exemplified what it is to be a Christ follower in this situation. I haven't seen many situations like yours, but you guys have just kind of acted out like, you know what, I'm going to honor Michelle, the mother of my children, just like the Bible would have you do, and it has helped me in my situation and in my journey. That has been so apparent and so clear to me. Man, just what is it to be a Christian? I mean, Michelle's just not a stranger per se, but God even says, man, to be like Him, even with strangers. So, I mean, I think being that you were married before, and now as you go your separate ways, I think following the blueprint is the thing that I've seen you do, you and Chrissy do, and Michelle and Greg, and it has been a beautiful thing to witness as you guys have raised these boys, and now they're men.
Thank you,
and
John.
getting ready to raise their own families.
Thanks again, Uncle, for sharing that. So for me, one of the highlights of the wedding was the dance afterwards, and I would say there was a good 2 hours of just dancing. The DJ was on fire, and this is the first time I ever saw an encore call for the DJ at the wedding.
Yeah.
The DJ said, "Nope, we got to send off the bride and groom." But I've talked to specifically my mom about this, uncles, and so she tells me that at her wedding with my dad, there was no dancing, and because maybe you guys can talk more about why there was no dancing at my dad's wedding, or I'm assuming some of your guys' weddings. I want to know when and how did that change for the Katina family? How did we go from no dancing at weddings to now we can't get people off the dance floor?
Well, we started reading a little bit more of the Bible. No,
There's a word called freedom.
yeah. I think the change was it was gradual, Josh. It was I don't think we can look at like a date. It happened in August. It was just, and I feel like that's how life is. Just the growing, and also the fact that everybody grows at a different pace. It doesn't mean that this one grows right. This one is too slow. It's like even nowadays in the environment that we live in, people see things differently. So I feel like everybody has to learn how to extend grace, because it's a grace that I'm going to need. And so going back to Uncle James and Auntie Chrissy, and then there's the step dad Greg, which, man, I got to every event like that we're together with them, I get to go and tell Greg thank you, because I feel like I'm thanking him on behalf of my brother. It's not the case with every situation, but I think when James and Auntie Michelle were going through their divorce, praise God that we rallied around our brother, and Auntie Michelle had a great family too that rallied around her, and so that's why I feel like we're experiencing the beauty right now. I just wanted to mention Jackson's speech.
Yeah.
That his the best man speech. It was amazing how he honored his brother. But he did talk about how when him and Dylan were little, they would go from their dad's house to their mom's house, and some of the rules were just a little different. They're a little different, but as they were growing up, they learned how to adapt to. And I think James and Chrissy, their motive was to love on the boys, and so was Greg and Michelle. So there was no competition there. It was just trying to parent them together, and I think collectively they did an amazing job. And but going back, the question of when we started dancing, man, I don't remember. But even spending time with Grandpa, who was our dad, and all of his rules. I feel like as time has gone by, he's changed his view, and I feel like really until we breathe our last breath, man, if we're willing to change and we're willing to grow and become more aware of God's word and what it says, I think we're going to see it in our lives. You know.
Yeah, T, I'm glad you brought up just for a moment there, just Dad's story, his history, because to the question of like no dancing allowed, I think about and I don't know historically how everything played out, but when it comes to Grandpa's story and how he was dramatically saved, radically saved, because he was in a mess. He was hardcore alcoholic, just the whole nine, just this very hard person, abusive. But when Jesus saved him, and he went from one extreme to the other, and so I think that even something like dancing, if I see our dad's story play out, he was a guy that anything that was questionable that would get in the way of his his pursuit of Jesus and the things of God, I think he just gathered all that up and said, "Man, I'm not going to do this." Yeah. It was not just the alcohol, right? Cold turkey, he cut it off. Mm-hmm. But anything else that maybe was a part of his past and his old life, which I commend him. I mean, it says a lot about him and his character. But I think dancing was one of those issues. And there's, in different denominations and maybe even in religions, there's things like dancing, or even drinking or not drinking, or drinking moderation. Those all become topical. Yeah. And I think, quite frankly, our dad was just more extreme, and dancing happened to be one of them. We just weren't allowed to dance. I don't know that he ever gave a reason that it made sense to me, but it was just the way we were raised.
I've heard my dad say, when he was growing up with Grandpa Moses, it was basically, if it was fun, it was sinful.
There you go. Exactly.
The word he would use was worldly.
Yeah.
Secular,
so that meant
worldly.
We couldn't do anything.
Yeah. Some of the things I've heard was no bowling. No
going to prom.
No prom.
Anything where you were, what do you call it, infiltrated with people of the world, that was like, don't do that because you're going to become like them.
My dad actually, this is a sad story to me, but my dad said that he was, at one point in high school, he was like class president. He was on student council or something, and he used to plan the school dances, but he couldn't come to the dance.
Yeah, he planned the whole event.
That's messed up.
How messed up is that?
That is messed up.
So now when you see us on the dance floor, you know why.
Yeah. We're going all out, man. It's fun. We're making up for lost time.
Yeah.
I mean, I looked on the dance floor, and there were people that were just releasing good energy, and I saw Michelle's dad, man.
Oh yeah,
and he's got to be probably close to in his 70s, huh? Yeah. And he was doing some crazy moves, man. I was a little worried, but man, he was good, man.
He loved it.
Yeah, and I think at the end of it, it's like, what is all of that produced, And I feel like it produced a lot of life, a lot of joy,
It's interesting now, because most of the shows that we do are in churches. Mm-hmm. And now, I mean, it seems like every church has a dance team, and it's, I think of, and I thought of it again on the dance floor at Dylan and Grace's wedding, just the word celebration. It's just an expression of celebrating two beautiful people coming together, and it's been nice since having our kids, nephews and nieces getting married. Yeah. We really are. We're making up for lost time on the dance floor.
Dancing is an interesting thing to me because I feel like there are certain things that when God created us, He put some what are the words? It's like a safety valve for emotion. And one of those things is music. I think humans, they love to sing when they feel things. When they're sad, when they're happy, which is that's a unique thing for humans among creation. Dancing is another one of those things. If you like, I wonder if there was an alien from another planet and he came to Earth and saw people dancing. It's such a strange thing when you really think about it. Why do people just like to move in ways that it doesn't seem like there's any productivity to it? But humans, when they want to celebrate, for some reason, a lot of humans, they want to dance. They do it through dance. And like, we recently went to Hawaii, and Alexis got to join us on the trip, and we went to a luau in Waikiki, and we saw all of the cultural Polynesian dances. And dance is a thing that you find across all cultures. And as I was watching those dancers, do the cultural dances, my mind goes to, where did this come from? Why is it that humans have a desire to why is it that dance is how we expressed it? And I think it's something that God put in our hearts.
Absolutely. I agree, Josh. I think it connects with the spirit, the soul. Yeti, you were saying it's an energy, it's a frequency. It's no wonder why music, singing, whatever that sound, and then dance, they go hand in hand. Rarely do you find someone dancing without music, right? It's just a frequency, it's an energy. I mean, little kids, we can say in a way, this is not taught, it's in us.
Right.
When you hear music, when you hear someone singing, because singing is different from talking, and there's a response that happens, and quite often it's movement, it's the emotion.
Yeah.
You're gonna react accordingly. So
It's a response to something good. After the wedding, we got to go to an NFL game. The Falcons against the Commanders, and when there's a touchdown, it's you're about to hear the loudest frequency in that stadium because it's good. Like he scored, or even say it's 4th and inches, they're going for it and they make it. You're going to hear a response. People aren't going to go, all right, that was good, cool. They're going to. I mean, it's a lot of yelling and screaming, but I think that's what dancing is too. It's a response to, man, two people came together and we're going to celebrate this.
Yeah, but Uncle, when you're talking about the NFL, last night was Monday night football. The Chargers and the Cowboys played. Were any of you guys watching that game?
I watched it.
I was.
Did you guys see at the end, I think it was in the fourth quarter, they kept taking the camera to this Chargers fan, this woman, and
I love it.
her emotion throughout the game, the highs, the lows. She was just... It was just an explosion of emotion.
Gone viral now.
And I think sports is another thing that it's a way for us to connect to something tribal almost in our minds. I was listening to the Joe Rogan podcast maybe a week or two ago, and he had a guest on named Eddie Bravo, and Joe Rogan's not a football fan, but he went to his first NFL game a couple of weeks ago. It was the Cowboys-Jets, and Rogan was talking about, I get it now. I'm not a fan, but I get why people love this so much. Yeah. And his guest, Eddie Bravo, he basically, I love the way he put it because I agreed with him. He's a Cleveland Browns fan, and he was saying, I understand that in the grand scheme of things, whether or not the Cleveland Browns win is not important. Right. It's a distraction. But he said, but I willfully go to it to be distracted. It's a good reprieve from the stresses of my life and the stresses of reality. Obviously, there's a lot of negative things happening in this world, and so football for him is 3.5 hours every week. He gets an escape from that, and I think I saw that on that lady's face, the Chargers fan. She's all over the internet now, and I was thinking I can relate with her. To when I watch football, I can just escape from everything else, and maybe maybe Grandpa Moses would have said that was sinful back in the day.
Don't be distracted.
That's a good way to.
Yeah, we should have said, Dad, watch us go to this dance, and when we come back, tell us if we're different.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Well, I have one more question for you guys. And going back to the wedding, the next day, my Auntie Chrissy, she sent us a photo that was taken at the wedding of our whole family. It's a large group of people, from the eldest all the way to my nephew, Josiah, who's turning 5 months this week. He was there. It was his first wedding. And I was looking at the photo, and I saw my uncles, my aunties, my cousins, and then I saw my wife, Alexis, some of my cousins' wives and husbands, Jervon and Leah, and now Grace, and I hope I'm not forgetting someone. And then Amelia, yes, my lovely sister-in-law. And then all the way down to Josiah, the youngest, my nephew. And I was just thinking, when you guys first came to the States, it was just the 5 of you, or the 6 of you with Uncle Dave. And now, I don't know if we have a number, what the number is of how many people are in the family. Is it over 40?
Well, I do know that the
Yeah,
5 brothers had 19 kids, and Dylan was the 5th to get married. So there's 14 more weddings that we got to go to. Yeah.
But just seeing, like, when I looked at that photo, I thought, this is like, in some ways, it's a miracle.
It is.
But also, it's just like how over time, how much things can change, how much things can grow. It seems like every year now, for the last 3 years, we've had at least one wedding. Now we have the next generation is coming, and I want to ask you guys, when you look at that photo and you see all of the change and growth, there's so many stories in every face in that photo of victory and the failure and defeat. I just want to know, what is your guys' reaction when you see, knowing where things started with just the 5 of you guys, or even just the one with Grandpa Moses and Grandma CI? What's your reaction to that photo?
Man, I love that word, miracle. And I took some time as well, just the other day, yesterday, to look at that picture. I think it was the same picture that you saw, that you're referring to. I was thinking about all the different stories. It's been quite a journey, with these 5 guys, and then because of each one's decision, to get married and to get married to a specific person, and then everyone's just, the web is getting bigger and more, getting wider. The net is getting wider, so to speak. And then I didn't take time to think about each individual story, but as you ask us that question, that would be really interesting to think about. Just, for my own boys, the injuries, different things that the maybe some trouble that they got into, things that we've celebrated, accolades, maybe times where different ones of them were going through a bout of depression. And then you just come back and see, because they were all just smiles. I don't think the photographer had asked us, okay, smile big. Everybody was, it was just a natural response because of what we were there to do. And it comes from the myriad of experiences, pain and joy, like you said, defeats, losses, or victories. It's just a miracle to see that we genuinely love each other. We've been there for each other. And then, again, to go back on, I would have moments to go on the dance floor, and then because my knees are giving out. I'd have to go and rest
Knees,
again.
head, shoulders,
yeah,
knees,
yeah.
and toes.
He used to dance the 5 songs. Now it's about 2 songs.
A lot of times it's just a stomping of the right knee now. But I would go in and out. But every time I'd come back in, man, I was like feeling that joy again, you know, and seeing that joy from especially the your generation. And now we've got, you know, Josiah and everyone coming up after him. What a miracle. And I just say, man, to God be the glory for allowing me to be chosen to be a part of this circle, this family. It's just quite amazing.
I think while Uncle John was talking, he gave me time to count. I think the number's 41.
Okay, 41.
Because we have 6 grandkids. Well, Josiah's the 6th one, and then there's 19 kids, and 6 of the 19 are have spouses, and then we all.
Yeah.
So
That's
if
41.
you put all that, I
Yeah.
think 41 is the number. But you know, here's Joe says this often in some of our shows. You know, people, man, I'd love to be like your family. I wish my family was like your family. And the good news and the bad news is your family is like our family. John, you just talked about the different feelings and emotions that, and I feel the same way when we all get together. But the challenge in having now 41 people in the family is we don't get together as much as we used to or as much as we'd love to. And so with that reality, there's this thing called work, right? You have to work. You have to work on relationships. They don't just exist like this. I was talking to someone who I just met who was invited by Grace, and they were like, "Man, I don't know, but I think you're all a whole family. Y'all are beautiful. There's an energy about you," and we get, you know, comments or compliments from time to time, even in our travels. But I think to your question, Josh, for me, that word miracle is so appropriate because, man, it's not because of the 5 of us that well, some of it is, and I think I give credit to my brothers, starting with Yeti, Joe, John, and Jesse, but then I go back to just the way we were raised, you know, and I think about our older brother Dave. But truly, a lot of what we experience, it's like the residual effect. It's just God's grace, His goodness, and I believe it's God's way of just honoring not only the trials that we've gone through, a lot of them due to our own decisions and mistakes that we've made along the way, along the journey, but it's His grace that's just covered us and actually protected us and allowed us a second chance to, you know, a redo, as some people will say. And when you collect all of that, I think again that we're very much like many other families. We've had our dysfunctions, and we're going to make mistakes, but family, you know, we used to have this thing in our home, and it just had the initials FOE, family over everything. And I hope and pray that when it comes to Josiah and Prince and Kaliana and Caleb and TJ, that
Cam.
yes, Cam, that they will, you know, even though they're generations, you know, that they will carry a lot of this on because they got to witness it for themselves, the good, the bad, and just the tough times. But truly, it is a miracle. It's a miracle.
Just a few thoughts, Josh. That in the days that we live in, according to the Bible, we're going to experience more evil days, darker days. Like what's going on in the Middle East right now, it's mind-boggling to a lot of people, but not to God. And in saying that, I feel like we have to progress as a family. And so our kids, our prayer, the 5 of us brothers, our prayer is that our kids would do greater things. And we've already seen you guys do greater things. And Jesus said that same thing to the disciples before he ascended. He told them that the Holy Spirit was coming, but he said, you guys are going to do greater things. And people would go, greater than what you did? You raised the dead? How much greater? But the disciples, they were empowered. And I pray that Josiah, even now, he's almost 5 months old, that God is already doing some work in him, because he's going to have to do greater things than your generation, and so that's our prayer. And also, I think just talking today about the wedding, and we've been talking about divorce and talked about the hard things, that's all God's whole picture of it. It's I don't think you could experience the joy of dancing if you haven't experienced pain of loss. And so in reading the book Voices of the Heart, remember Chip Dodd, he was just talking about living a full life. And life without dancing, I don't think that would be a complete life, Yeah. But life without pain, I don't think we would know joy without pain. So yeah, man, I think this podcast gives people just a little bit more encouragement to just keep living, wake up every day, and know that you've got purpose. And yeah, man, that's it, man.
Awesome. Thank you, Uncle. Thank you guys for being here. We'll finish there.
Josh. Thank you.
To those of you listening, thank you for tuning in. We'll be back with more episodes soon. Have a great day.